everyone, Katie here. Just want to give you a quick shout out that we are going to drop major spoiler bombs all through this episode. We are talking about Being Erica, which is one of our most beloved series of all time. If you have not seen this, stop right now, go turn on some device and start watching this series because it's the best and we don't want to ruin it for you. Okay, thanks.
Welcome to Must See IMDB, a podcast where we break down IMDB's #1 top-rated episode of a classic TV show, and then we discuss, did the IMDB voters do the show justice, or are there some hidden gem episodes that need a boost up the list? I'm Abby.
And I'm Katie.
You may have noticed our voices are exactly the same because we're twins.
As kids, we watched a ridiculous amount of television, and we continue to do so right through to today. We watch, we discuss, and now we're discussing with you.
And today we are discussing a Canadian show that premiered in 2009. It ran for 4 seasons, and it's called Being Erica. As of this recording, you can watch it on Hulu or Amazon Prime. All right, and that's how we just rewatched it. I don't know about you. I rewatched a boatload of Being Erica.
Yeah, I had this whole strategy of how I was going to attack this. I was like, I'm going to watch 10 episodes, the top 10, just to decide which is my favorite. And then I could not stop hitting next episode and watching the in-betweenies, as we might say. This is one where even after we're done recording this, I think I'm just going to go back and watch the whole thing rather than skipping and jumping.
I think as we're recording this, in some of the darker days, it's midwinter here. This really is a hot chocolate comfort, snuggle up and just get lost. It's a comfort food kind of a show.
Well, and we have to give everyone a synopsis sort of this show because it is a hidden gem.
Yes. All right. So Being Erica is about a young 32-year-old woman named Erica Strange. She is played by Erin Karpluk. And I think we can both agree, much like Scott Bakula in Quantum Leap, Erin Karpluk is so engaging and wonderful.
Oh, you care about her from day one. And I just love her so much. What a great actress.
Yeah, she's really fun to watch. So we're immediately intrigued when she's just having a terrible day. Her career's going nowhere. She gets fired. Her boyfriend doesn't really care about her. She gets kind of dumped. She's just lost. And she ends up having an anaphylactic shock experience when she accidentally tastes something that has like nuts in it and she's allergic. She ends up in the hospital. And in the midst of all this, she is visited by a mysterious Dr. Tom who invites her to join therapy with himself as her doctor and gives her this card. And essentially it says results are guaranteed. So she decides to give it a go, and she's given the option to write down every regret in her life, which let's all ponder that for a moment. What would your list of regrets look like? Erica Strange's list is quite long, and he gives her the opportunity to travel back in time and change something she regrets from her past. And from there, we go on her journey as she starts checking these regrets off her list. And what I love about the show is that as she grows and even grows out of that list she made, the series changes with her and takes steps in directions that you aren't expecting at the beginning, much like Erica herself. And it really just kind of folds back on itself and grows and pivots in all kinds of interesting ways.
Yes, that every time you're like, oh man, if we have to keep going through all these regrets for however many episodes, this is going to get old. And then boom, you never see it coming. But when it happens, you're like, oh my gosh, of course, this is what needs to happen next.
All right, well, let's get into what IMDb and the voters there say is this show's very best episode. Now we've got a tie here, and ring-a-ding-ding, wouldn't you know, one of the top-rated episodes is the series finale. It's an episode called Dr. Erica that concludes the 4th season. And then the other episode that has the exact same rating is the season 3 finale called Erica Interrupted.
So do you want to just attack it sort of in chronological order? So maybe we should do the season finale first, which is Erica interrupted, and then we can do Dr. Erica.
Right. So, as we were talking about before, Erica, as a character, has worked through her personal therapy with Dr. Tom. And it turns out that the second level of therapy is group therapy. So, we're introduced to 3 new characters in her group, one of whom becomes a romantic interest named Adam. And sometimes you partner with one of these other characters and they come back with you in your past as you're confronting a regret. And then you start to see what their lives are like because you sometimes accompany them on their own time travel back to their past. So in this way, we get to learn a lot more about Adam, especially as a character. And that's how sort of their relationship grows throughout the 3rd season. And then Kate, you want to take it away on what Erica Interrupted itself is about?
Sure. So at this point, Erica's life is looking pretty great. She's got a stable relationship with Adam. Things are going really well at work. Basically, everything that she wasn't when she started therapy, she has now achieved. So she's got a pretty good, solid foundation under her. And after basically consummating her relationship with Adam, she wakes up the next morning, walks through a door, and she walks back into her life on the day that she met Dr. Tom. So all 3 of those seasons of her growth and career development and relationships with people have been completely wiped out. She's been in a coma for 2 weeks. She's exactly where she was when we first met her. Everyone around her thinks she's crazy because she keeps talking about this weird time traveling thing she's been doing, and they all think she's completely nuts.
Well, and did this give you flashbacks to Quantum Leap that we were talking about? Because all the people we know, like her business partner, shows up as a nurse. The guy who runs the coffee house where she has an office is like a hospital orderly. And Dr. Tom is her neurologist who, we're supposed to think, oh, she's been in this coma for 2 weeks. So she's worked all these people into this fantasy she's created in her mind, which we know as the show.
Exactly. So she gets to a pretty low point. They kind of set it up to make it seem like she's, maybe going to do the whole It's a Wonderful Life thing and jump off a bridge. And she sort of hallucinates. One of the really important people in her life is her older brother, Leo, who died when he was 18. And she sort of sees him on this bridge, and she's kind of like arguing with herself, and Leo is a representation of her more negative thoughts. And she, says, listen, if I have to go through all of this again, the one thing that they can't take away from me is all of the experiences I have had and what they've made me.
Yeah, and that she's coming at it from a place with all the knowledge that she has, even if it really was this hallucinogenic 2-week coma that everyone is leading her to believe is the reality.
Right. So, and in that, basically, she proves her strength. And then she's 7 shades of ticked off when it turns out that this was basically her final test to become a doctor herself. So like we said, she started off in therapy with Dr. Tom. She eventually grows enough to be able to join group therapy, and now is the final stage where she's in training to become a doctor, a therapist herself. And this was sort of the final test.
Exactly. And this also jumps us into all the potential for the 4th and what ended up being the final season, wherein she practices helping people that she knows in her life already. So she's sort of given one-off assignments to help people she already knows solve some regret or problem in their own life. And this is where I find it gets interesting with the sort of Quantum Leap parallels, right? Like she's not leaping into other people, but suddenly it is about solving other people's problems, not just her own. But at the same time, she's using those opportunities to grow and become a better doctor.
And another fun part is that the first quote unquote practice patient they give her is her ex-brother-in-law, this extremely horrible person that we've all hated for 3 seasons.
Yes, I thought that was so interesting.
Brilliant, right? So, we think, oh, Erica's going to be this wonderful doctor because she's going to, and she is a very loving, helpful, helping person, but her younger sister's ex-husband is just a real case. And she kind of has to put all this vitriol that's gone on between them as she sort of tried to, protect and defend her sister against this guy. And now she has to like see things from his point of view. I love how they are always pivoting her. Just when you think that she's got the right point of view, then you get to see somebody else's side of it. And it's like, well, wait a minute, there's two sides to this coin here.
Yeah. Now, one thing I do think is really interesting about this show, everyone's in love with Erica. Like even the annoying ex-husband of her sister, it's like the end problem is that he was really in love with Erica this whole time. And you're like, oh my God, can't he just be a prick and have the solution not be that he's like in love with her and that created the toxic problem the whole time?
Yeah. I mean, my gosh, we're in love with her. But yes, people are falling over themselves to fight over her.
Rock stars from the future. Every hot guy you've ever seen in the series ends up falling for her.
Thank God they never had anything romantic between Dr. Tom and Erica. It's more of a father-daughter relationship there. And I also like that throughout the series, we get to see more of where he is coming from and what his past is and how did he become a doctor. And even, you see too, even these therapists have, really sometimes kind of darker histories.
Yeah, one thing I thought was interesting about all the people who play doctors on this show, as we understand in the series later on, all these doctors obviously started out as patients themselves. So I appreciated that as we got to know them better. Yeah. Okay. So let's now briefly sum up the series finale now, Dr. Erica. So as the title suggests, she is now going to become a full-fledged doctor herself. And the series is wrapping up all the relationships and all the storylines that we've seen throughout.
Spoiler alert, maybe I'm jumping too far ahead. It's not my favorite episode, but it is the episode that I think has Erin Karpluk, who plays Erica. I think it's her best performance. It's basically the scene where Dr. Tom comes to the decision that he doesn't want to be a therapist anymore. And at the same time that he's pulling away from therapy, Erica's learning to be a therapist. That means that he can't ever see Erica again. They can have no contact. So my favorite scene is when Erica learns about this and she's trying so hard to give back to him, but she really doesn't want to do it. I just think it's so well performed.
Yeah, and it took me a while to like the actor who plays Dr. Tom. I love how he holds it together for the whole scene. And then when she leaves, he's crying, which he has not let her see while she was there. So I thought that scene was very powerful for both of those characters.
Absolutely. I agree. So after she goes away, Dr. Nadia, who is Dr. Tom's therapist, pulls her in and says, you need to let him go. And Erica basically is kind of like, screw you, I don't want to. And so Dr. Nadia throws Erica into this hall of doors with her brother. And Erica learns that her brother is kind of in limbo. And ever since he died, he's been in this hallway and every door opens into an old memory from his life. And the only door that he hasn't tried is essentially the door towards death or whatever comes next. And he's too scared to go through that door. And Erica wants for him to be able to move on. And of course, that's an allegory for being able to let Dr. Tom move on.
One thing I thought we should just conclude is that they also tie up every loose end you can possibly imagine in that Erica fully becomes a doctor in this process. And her first true patient ends up being Dr. Tom's daughter, Sarah. As we get to know Dr. Tom throughout the series, it's clear that his greatest regret is the loss of his daughter to drug use. And we see him and his daughter at various stages throughout the series. Even though Dr. Tom will no longer be, participating or allowed to interact with Erica, we see that she'll pay it forward by her first patient being his daughter, Sarah. And that's how the series concludes. So I just think that that's a beautiful ending. I think that that's probably one of the reasons why it did garner a tie for the best voted episode.
There are some fun details in the final episode. We've talked a little bit, especially in Schitt's Creek, about wardrobe and how it can express what's happening in the story. So I love the dress that she wears in this particular episode has feathers all over it, as if maybe, we've got some wing bird leaving the nest, rising above it all. She's also got this amazing cuff bracelet on that is also wings. like the wings are wrapping around her wrist. But if you look closely, you can see that the head that attaches the two wings together is like an owl's face, wisdom, perhaps, wisdom. So those were just some fun details that I saw in the final episode that I thought were great.
And now we have to reveal if we agree that either this series finale or Erica Interrupted are truly the very best episodes of this series. So, Katie, what do you think?
Both are great, but neither are my favorite. I did a lot of hand wringing over this because one of my favorite plot lines, and the one that I remember most from this show, has to do with knowing your own mortality. So one of her love interests is from the future, and she has a real connection with him because he's the first other person that she meets that does this therapy and time travels. Okay, season 3, episode 4, it's called Wash, Rinse, Repeat. This is a very fun episode, but also a very turning point episode. So like I said, there's this man named Kai, totally hot because every man she meets on this show that turns out to be love interest is very hot, people. And he is from the future, and he is living in her present because that's his past, and he's there to write a regret on his list. But of course, they sort of form a relationship, and he comes back from the future several times throughout the series. But this time he basically barges into her apartment, tells her that because of the brief romance they've had in the past, he can't get over her and he can't have meaningful relationships in his present, which is the future. And so he ended up trying to find her in the future, and he can't find her. And he's very worried because of something that has happened that he won't tell her what it is, that she might not be alive in his present, which is 2019. So of course she freaks out and cannot do anything because she just needs to know, like, what happens in 8 years? Like, am I alive? Am I dead? Like, what's happening? So Dr. Tom makes her repeat this day where Kai has told her this information over and over. It's basically Groundhog Day in an episode. So she spends like the first 10 times trying to get more information out of Kai, but every time she tries to dig, he gets pulled out by his therapist and can't tell her anything. So she slowly does all these various versions of this same day with completely different reactions. She gets, cold drunk one time. She's angry. She's kind of going through the stages of grief and all of these relivings of this information being passed on to her. Until she finally kind of hits acceptance. And what I love about this episode is that you've gone through this whole thing with her. You're trying to imagine, this is a hypothetical question that we all ask ourselves, like, would you want to know when you're going to die? And what I love is the pivot that they do at the end, is that she's finally come to accept this. And then she goes to have dinner with her mom. And here's where we pivot, because just when she feels like she's back in control of her life again, and that her mom reveals that she has breast cancer, and her mom doesn't know if she will survive. So it's kind of like, as a person who's very type A, and I just cannot not be in control, it's nice to see another person who loves to be in control lose it, accept that she's lost it, but then lose it again when somebody that she loves, she can't help there either.
Yeah, it's also about living in the present. Like, I think that was kind of the point of the repeat of the day. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there a moment at the end as well where we learn that Dr. Tom apparently went forward to 2019 to make sure he could find Erica? And there's this moment between Erica and Dr. Tom before we find this out where he says, Erica, everything's going to be fine. So it's also like, well, maybe she is going to be fine because
what does he know? What did he find out?
Exactly. So I find it very interesting how it's still mysterious, but we do have some extra information that probably Erica will be fine.
Yes. And I was wringing my hands over this because there is another bookend episode to this episode. It's called Please, Please Tell Me Now, where she's living life, she's living every day to its fullest, but she's starting to make decisions in her life based on the idea that she might die in 8 years. And what I love about this episode is that Dr. Tom does not pull her out of this one. She does. She becomes a doctor, and her future doctor self comes back to get her through this. And there's another really poignant scene between her future self, who walks through the door back into Dr. Tom's office, and they have a very special moment, but it's very clear that she knows something about their future that he does not know. And she is pretty much saying goodbye to him and he doesn't realize. And I'm tearing up just talking about it. It's so good.
To me, her performance in that scene between them, where it's her quote unquote future self, she's holding it together and he's just obliviously being himself. And when she leaves, she breaks down into tears, which she did not let him see. And I just find it's an interesting mirror of the later scene, but we haven't seen the later scene yet.
So, as I said, really hard to decide between those two episodes that address her future mortality. But I will go with Wash, Rinse, Repeat, season 3, episode 4.
All right, great. Well, that's an amazing episode. Love that one. Again, I'm going to just say I totally understand why the voters did what they did. And I do think this series finale especially kind of nailed it on the head, but it's not my favorite episode, although my favorite episode is also beloved by the voters. And it is season 1, episode 13, and it's called Leo. And as you've surmised, because we've talked about him already, this is where Erica first approaches the biggest regret in her life, which is that her brother Leo died when he was 18. They were at her grandmother's farm. He was smoking some weed in a barn and the barn caught on fire and he was asleep and did not make it out of the fire on time. Dr. Tom allows Erica to go back because she regrets that she just never got to say goodbye. They did not have a nice conversation. Like her last memory of interacting with him was not great. And that's what she wants to fix. But as I'm sure you can imagine, because who wouldn't, when she gets back in there, much like the Quantum Leap episode we talked about, she's desperate to change the history and successfully does so. So when she comes back to her present, Dr. Tom is furious because she has interfered in someone else's history, which you are not allowed to do. But how incredible, even as a viewer, to see grown-up Leo. It's her brother if he had just kept going, and he's an architect, and she's just, staring at him with doe-eyed wonder that we as the viewer are simultaneously having, because it's so thrilling that Leo is still there and he's a grown-up now.
Yeah, but that's because we're under the misconception that this is Quantum Leap and all can be jolly and happy and you can change somebody else's destiny, but not in this world, people.
Oh, yes, because mere moments later, he's killed in a car accident and she has to relive the death all over again. So they make it very clear.
This is seen as a huge no-no.
I just think it's so interesting how the show and also the actors approached these scenes where she can't make it a big deal that this is the last time she's going to see him. But of course, for her, it is a big deal. She ends up convincing him he's really angry at his parents. So she convinces him to write this letter to them and just tell them his thoughts and get it out that way so that he won't get interrupted and it won't be another big fight.
Right. And just to clarify, this is because Dr. Tom makes her go back and do it again without saving him.
Right. She has to fulfill the promise that she initially made and as you said, breached. So, but we do see that this time he does write the letter and she watches him die in the fire and all she has left is this letter. But I mean, to me, that's what's so traumatizing about it. I mean, to have it happen and you not know about it and
you wake up to this barn fire, but then to know that it's going to happen and you can't stop it. That was also great acting.
Right. But she essentially buries this letter. And then when back in her present day, because she did change history in that smaller way, she is able to give that letter that he wrote to his parents to the parents. And in this way, they are also able as a family to start talking about him again and like actually beginning a healing process that has just sort of been pushed off all these years. So again, I just think it's the most emotionally powerful episode of the entire series. So I'm going to go with season 1, episode 13, Leo.
I think that is an excellent selection. I think it's kind of odd to be talking about realness when we're talking about a time travel show, but I like that this show treats time travel how I would imagine it if it were real, where you can't change other people's destinies, and how hard that would be when it's the destiny of somebody you love and it's not what you want for them. I mean, death being, the ultimate. There's other things that the show does where Dr. Tom's daughter, Sarah, has a drug addiction problem. And we see time and again him having epiphanies with her. And then she turns around and once again, goes back into drug addiction. Yes, this is a fun, cozy show, but it treats things a little bit more realistically than some other shows might.
Okay, so let's go ahead and pivot and start talking about the boys in this series, because boy, are there a lot of them. Let's get started with season 1's first boyfriend. His name is Ryan. I remember nothing about him. He shows up now and then. He's boring. She quickly moves on. Do you have any thoughts about Ryan?
No, I don't. I'm with you. Let's just skip right over that one.
Okay, next up.
I'll move on to Ethan. He's the one that's basically, even though she's dating this first guy, Ryan, is that his name? Okay, whatever. The whole first part of the series is devoted to her best friend, Ethan, whom she has a crush on, and will they or won't they, basically.
So obviously they will, and she gets the best friend becomes the boyfriend, I think is the trope we've got going here.
Yes, but she soon discovers that she's more experimental and impulsive, and he's more middle of the road, very supportive of her, but just kind of in a different place and not looking to do wild and crazy things as much as she wants him to.
Yes, this very much reminds me of Into the Woods, where you've got the line that goes, how can you know what you want till you get what you want, and then you see if you like it. And that's essentially what's happened to Erica. She really wanted Ethan. She gets Ethan. And maybe it turns out that that's not exactly what she wanted after all.
It's one of those things where it's two people who really care about each other, but they just don't work together.
Yeah. So it's a pretty amicable breakup. But she decides to take some risks essentially with her career. And that also kind of makes the relationship fizzle because he's not interested in the risks that she wants to take on her own. But then also let's throw in Kai, because Kai's the next boy and he shows up while she's still dating Ethan, and that creates some friction as well. So hot takes on Kai. Let's hear them.
Okay, well, we slowly don't know this yet, but we eventually find out that Kai is a fellow time traveler from this future, and he's come to his past, which is Erica's present. Am I getting confusing enough yet? To return on a regret of his own. So her first contact with him is figuring out, oh my gosh, there's another time traveler here. And she connects with him on that level. But the guy is totally hot. He sings songs. He plays the guitar. How could she not eventually start falling for him?
Yeah. He sings songs to her about how they're both aliens in this world and they're the only aliens who could ever truly understand one another. It's very hot.
Lift your eyes and let me in, 'cause baby, I'm an alien like you. Will you ever let me be an alien with you? Aren't you tired of running?
Plus, we find out that in his present, Erica's future, he's like a world-renowned rock star. He's essentially like Chris Martin is what I'm thinking they're kind of.
Oh, he's totally Chris Martin. And the other fun part is that in Erica's present, he's about 10 years younger than her. But emotionally, they're the same age, but he is rocking a hot young 20s body while having the same emotional age as her.
Right. So Kai is kind of in the picture, but he keeps popping back and forth. We talked about how he reveals information to Erica and all kinds of problems result, but she's very much on again, off again with him because he's only around now and then. And then, of course, she meets the Irish Adam in group therapy.
Yeah, my favorite thing about this is that, like, every time you see a scene and it's a new part of Erica's life, and there's one really hot guy in amongst the other relatively hot people, oh, wait a minute. Oh, this must be the new carrot that we're waving in front of the pony. And Adam is definitely a very good looking carrot.
It's clear that he will be boy number 3 or 4 if we count Ryan, but nobody's counting Ryan.
Yeah, we don't, whatever with Ryan.
Okay. And then I think what's interesting about those two as a couple is that she's very attracted to him. He's clearly attracted to her, but they're both in therapy. They have a lot to work on for themselves. And what I really like about their relationship is that they try things. It doesn't work. They break up, but they're both continuing to work on themselves as a result. And so I think it's very satisfying that, of course, in the end, she does end up with Adam, but only after she has to acknowledge the fantasy elements of Kai in order to, settle down and get real with Adam.
Right. And also through this, since he's part of her group therapy and is also a time traveler, you get to do a lot of fun episodes where we get to learn more about Adam and his growth and trajectory and where he came from. Out of all of the boyfriends, we learn probably the most about him.
Yeah, he ends up seeming most like a real person in the same way that we've gotten to know all the ins and outs of Erica.
And did we not mention his dreamy blue eyes? And the Irish accent doesn't hurt.
Yes, both are additional pluses that make us A-okay that she didn't go with the rock star.
Although he was very tempting.
All right. So those are the boys of the series. Now, which one would you have wanted to end up with? Also Adam or Ethan or Kai or maybe Milo, the man of her dreams?
Oh my God. She comes up with the man of her dreams and he is a horrible, horrible disaster. But this is the thing. I am Ethan, right? So I would be an excellent match for Ethan because I too like the sure thing and being in control and having zero anxiety if I can avoid it at all costs. So I think I would be an excellent match for Ethan. I think he's a wonderful friend to her. That's another thing I like about them is that they were like best friends for years before they got involved. So I would be Team Ethan if I myself were Erica.
I'm going to go with Adam.
You and your husband are kind of a little bit have that Erica Adam thing going on.
Well, yeah, we're both fiery and boy, do we know how to argue. But at the end of the day, we're A-okay.
Exactly. I knew it. I knew you were going to go with Adam. And can I just say that I think my husband is a little bit of Ethan?
Your husband is very Ethan. Mine is very Adam. And let's be honest, neither of us is going to run off with a rock star from the future.
No.
That'll remain like Erica in our fantasies.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So let's talk about Erin Carpluck. She is so delightful. And the place that I've most seen her besides this show is that she's in a million Christmas movies. It makes sense to me. A lot of this show has the lighter, frothier elements are very Christmas movie-ish.
Yes. Now, another fun little tidbit I found out is that Drake, like the singer Drake, he shows up on this show. He plays some guy named Ken in season 1, episode 2, What I Am is What I Am. He's billed as Aubrey Graham, and that's, I think, his, real name. And he was on Degrassi, The Next Generation. He played Jimmy Brooks.
Right. I've heard that about Drake. And Katie, didn't Janice Senor write on that show? Just a quick note that Janice Senor is the creator of Being Erica and was its head writer throughout the series. She also appears briefly in 3 episodes.
She did for the first, for season 2 and 3 of that, she wrote.
So obviously he was like doing her a favor.
I guess.
Now, one thing I found interesting in rewatching it, I found myself skipping a lot of the workplace stuff.
Oh, people have written about this, about how that's like the part that probably has the most issues with it.
Right. And I really like the trajectory of how unlikable characters like Julianne, you get to know them better and they end up becoming the new best friend / business partner. But I just didn't care about the publishing stuff, I guess. And I think you and I have talked about this. There ends up being a romance between Julianne and Brent, both workplace characters. And I think they were trying to figure out what to do with probably both of those characters and decided to put them together. But it really didn't make sense back then. And rewatching it really didn't make sense this time to me at all.
Well, the one thing I will say, though, is that Morgan Kelly, who plays Brent, I really like him. And I think that in the final season, that guy can act. I love what he does. especially when he's not saying anything, because he's really good at showing us how he's feeling without words. And I agree with you that we're all surprised when he and Julianne start to have a relationship, because basically you think he's gay. And I'm not sure how that would go over, as a viewer, if, I weren't a heterosexual woman.
What I see is a bit problematic now, and as you say, we're two heterosexual women discussing this, but the other gay relationships in the show, because there are a number. There's a college friend that Erica was kind of attracted to, who's a lesbian. There's Ivan and Dave, the coffee shop owners, but their gay relationship is very like cutesy and seems very kind of side charactery. And yes, we see them get married and so on, but I feel like their relationship is kind of there for a bunch of heterosexual women to be like, oh, it's so cute. I don't know. It doesn't have the same depth that like what you're talking about, for example, with exploring the Julianne and Brent relationship. But I'm just curious, like, why couldn't we have a gay relationship that had the same depth as maybe one of Erica's relationships?
Yeah, and there was an episode where Dave and Ivan kiss, and I was thinking to myself, okay, when was this aired? And do you remember on Modern Family where there was all this hand wringing because the two gay men on that show who are married, we never saw them kiss, and then there was like all this big brouhaha over, oh my gosh, we're actually going to air an episode where they kiss. And it was the most chaste peck I've ever seen in my life. And I felt like at least in this series, people were, kissing, oh, see you later, honey, smooch out the door. And it wasn't this big moment, but yes, it still has the cutesy side character-y. And not only that, can I just mention that like every person on the show is white, and the one person who isn't, i.e. Erica's best friend, disappears basically after season 1, is like never to be heard from again, except for like big birthday party scenes where she shows up to like, say hi.
However, Sam, the little sister, starts dating a black man named Lennon. They end up having a baby together. So, but here's the thing. I feel like at least they're trying.
I know. And that's what I'm saying. Like at that time period, none of this was going on in American television.
I think the show could have widened its horizons a little bit further. There's diversity in this show, but we can all agree that the characters who are fully explored are all white.
Right.
I think there's a lot of good actors on this show. I was pleased to see that.
I know, even in parts that don't get, as much attention as they should. I mean, whoever cast this did a great job. Yeah, and similar to Schitt's Creek, I find myself talking like this show, especially Julianne, who has like every catchphrase you can possibly. Tonight, when I was putting my kids to bed, I was like, okay, guys, here's the dealio. We're all going to go upstairs.
Well, one last thing I wanted to mention about Julianne is I believe she's the only other character that Erica quantum leaps into. So Erica, for one episode, quantum leaps into Julianne as a teenager. And she's not there to write a regret or anything like that. It's a Christmas episode where Erica gets to time travel to 3 Christmases. Erica's family is Jewish, and Julianne goes on and on about these amazing Christmases her family always has. So Erica leaps into Julianne as a teenager and gets to experience what like a fancy Christmas is like. It's pretty hilarious. We also get to meet more of Julianne's family and kind of understand why she is the way she is. So that was a fun episode.
Wait a minute. Is this like a leap where she's having fun?
Yes, and I think you should go watch it. Like one of the things we talked about was
Abby, as soon as we get done with this, I am going back and watching every single. I have to say, out of all the episodes that we've done and having to watch all these shows, this is the one where I was like, be quiet, everyone. I need to watch yet another episode of Being Erica today.
All right, now I have one fun game to play with this one based on the time travel. There's an episode that I watched just before we got started. It's actually a season 1 episode. It's called The Perfect Day. But the idea in it is that Dr. Tom's like, you know what, screw this whole fixing a regret thing. What is like a perfect day that you remember and you'd like to just go, wash yourself in that day again to have some fun with it? And she goes back to relive this quote unquote perfect day. and it's like not perfect. But anyways, if you were going to go back and visit a day that you felt was perfect on your first time around, what day would it be?
Oh gosh. So, normally we vacation as a family, but a couple years ago, we went and visited this little island up in Canada where our aunt lives. And instead of going as a family, I just took my oldest son. And so it was the first time that he and I had been alone together. I mean, crazy long airline flights, et cetera. But this is a childhood place that Abby, you and I, spent summers at, and sharing all of these old places that we used to go to and things that we would do, kayaking and swimming in freezing cold water. And I broke down all the rules. And so for breakfast every morning, we'd go out and pick raspberries from the raspberry bushes, and we'd eat ice cream and raspberries for breakfast every morning, which he thought was like the coolest thing ever. So I would go relive one of those days. I mean, we didn't really, nothing momentous happened, but just showing all these childhood old haunts to my kid. It was really a special bonding time. I think I'd go back to one of those days.
Oh, that's lovely.
What about you? What perfect day, fingers crossed, it ends up being as perfect as you remember it, would you go to?
Well, I think I'm going to take a hint from Erica in that, when other people are involved, it's hard to recreate a perfect day in your mind because it's very dependent on all those other people who were involved in quote unquote making it a perfect day. So I'm going to also go with a vacation day I had, but it was not a vacation with my family. It was a vacation I took solo. I took a solo drive down the coast of Oregon. This also harkens back to a place we used to travel to as kids. That same aunt took us to this special hotel. It's called the Sylvia Beach Hotel.
Yes, and it's in Newport.
Yeah, no TV, no phones. Everybody goes there to read books, and every room is decorated like a famous author and or their works.
I stayed in the Dr. Seuss room. That's where my husband proposed, and we stayed in the Dr. Seuss room. Oh my gosh. There was a fish in the toilet tank, and it was like a double-walled glass system where the fish wouldn't get flushed down the toilet. It was great.
I stayed in the Gertrude Stein room, which we had stayed in before one time on our visit. So it was just funny to be back in the same little room and literally just read really great books I brought with me and go for walks on the insanely windy beach there.
Oh, and they've got this library on the very top floor with these amazing ocean views and like armchairs and a tea station. And you just sit there with your little cup of whatever and watch the waves while you read your book. It's so awesome.
Yeah, but the best part about going up to that room is that there are usually like 15 other people also up in that room, but it's so quiet you can hear a pin drop, and the only sound is someone sipping their tea or turning a page or quietly doing a puzzle together, and it is blissful. Again, as a mom of 3 kids, that kind of respectful quiet is so precious.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
All right. So there you have it. IMDB says that the best episodes of Being Erica is the series finale called Dr. Erica, and also the season 3 finale called Erica Interrupted. However, we disagree a little bit. My favorite episode is the season 1 finale called Leo.
And my favorite episode, this is Katie, is Wash, Rinse, Repeat, season 3, episode 4, where we learn a little bit more about mortality and time travel, but also to bookend it, feel free to check out Please Please Tell Me Now, season 4, episode 8.
All right, so what's your favorite Being Erica episode? What episode do you plan to go to IMDb and vote up the list? Let us know. You can always email us at mustseeimdb@gmail.com. All right, we've got to figure out how can we quantum leap from this show to the next one.
Well, I think a pretty good bet would be Frasier. Because let's face it, he's a therapist, and that's what we just went through, so why not go through it on a different track?
Oh, I love this. All right, so sitcom therapy. There's lots of seasons to choose from this time.
That's true. We're going to be watching a boatload of Frasier in the coming weeks.
All right, everyone, you go watch a boatload of Frasier too, and we'll see you to discuss it all on the next episode of Must See IMDb. See you then.
Bye.